Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Michigan's magical run in 2022 came to a crashing and disappointing end when the Wolverines fell 51-45 to TCU in what was arguably one of the best college football playoff games we have ever seen. The Wolverines now come in at number 2 in our way too early Gridiron Expert Top 25, and it's hard not to rank them this high. Fresh off a 13-1 season, the reigning Big Ten champions, back-to-back college football playoff appearances, and they return loads of talent, including their quarterback J.J. McCarthy, their running back Blake Corum, who will be one of the best running backs in the country. Jim Harbaugh is back after flirting with potential NFL jobs, will be back in Ann Arbor this year, and they're projected to have 8 starters back on defense. This Michigan team is loaded once again, and they have a very favorable schedule that could see them run the table and get back to their 3rd straight college football playoff. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad that you could join us today. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below because here at the Gridiron Expert, football never dies. The college football season never ends here at the Gridiron Expert. We want you to become a part of our GE Nation and what we're building here at this channel. Do that by liking, commenting, subscribing, hitting that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our future content, because later we're going to predict Michigan's schedule game by game. We're going to predict every single one. We're going to do that for every college football team. We're going to have analysis. We're going to have live streams. We're going to have, you name it, we're going to do it, and we want you to be a part of that right here at the Gridiron Expert. So let's take a look at Michigan's schedule. Let's just dive into it. You know who's coming back. You know what they did last year. You look at the schedule now and you go, holy cow. This thing is easy. This is a favorable schedule. Once again, Michigan has a weak non-conference schedule. ECU, UNLV, and Bowling Green. All at home. Michigan does not leave Ann Arbor until September 30th when they travel to Nebraska. So their first 4 games are at home, first 3 are non-conference games, and they are cakewalks. Michigan should literally walk through those games. Their first Big Ten game is against Rutgers, a Rutgers team that I have a bit of a soft spot for, I will not lie, but obviously a Rutgers team that is not nearly to the point of contending with the likes of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, guys like that. Michigan beat the Scarlet Knights 52-17 in Piscataway last year. Would not expect too much of a different result this year. Rutgers could be a bowl team. They could be a bowl team, but one of their 6 wins would not come against Michigan. So you look, there's a good chance that Michigan could be 4-0 heading into their September 30th matchup at Nebraska. Nebraska's quite the anomaly, right? What are we going to expect from Matt Rule in year 1? Year 1 in Lincoln, Matt Rule comes in, did a great job at Temple, did a great job at Baylor. NFL didn't work out that well. What's he going to do? No one really knows what to expect from Nebraska in year 1. So that's a game that Michigan certainly cannot afford to overlook, especially with it being on the road, especially if Nebraska finds themselves succeeding in the first 4 weeks of the season. With some newfound momentum and optimism, Nebraska certainly never is an easy place to play. But last year in Ann Arbor, Michigan beat the Cornhuskers 34-3. You'd have to see a 31-point swing from Nebraska to beat Michigan at home. Not saying it's not possible. We'll predict Michigan's record later, but Nebraska, not horrible. When you look at the cross-division games, the teams that Michigan draws out of the Western Division of the Big Ten, Nebraska, Purdue, and Minnesota. Nebraska, Minnesota, and Purdue. 2 of those 3 are on the road, but none of them are honestly that challenging. They avoided Illinois, who they nearly lost to towards the end of last year. They avoid Wisconsin, who could be very dangerous in year 1 under Luke Fickell. That's about it. They avoid arguably the top 2 teams in the West. It's not that bad. They have to face a rebuilding Nebraska team, the first-year head coach. They have to face a Minnesota team who will be sneaky good. Defensively is sneaky good. Could be a low-scoring game against Minnesota on October 7th. Don't overlook that game as a big-time trap game for Michigan. But they take on Minnesota, who's just kind of mediocre under PJ Fleck, but the defense is going to be stingy. And then they face the Purdue team off of a bye week, a Purdue team that is dealing with a new coach, does not have Aiden O'Connell anymore, and is probably going to go through some rough patches in year 1 under Ryan Walters. And it's at home in Ann Arbor off of a week of rest. The cross-division games are very favorable for Michigan. So you look at the schedule again. Projected 4-0 start more than likely. At Nebraska, cross division. At Minnesota, cross division. Indiana, Michigan won by 21 over the Hoosiers last year. It's at home. At Michigan State, rivalry game. Never can overlook that game. That's another tough game there. It's in East Lansing. That's a Michigan State team that probably is going to bounce back a little bit, I would presume, after a disappointing 2022. Michigan won 29-7 last year. I expect the game to be a little bit closer, especially if Mel Tucker starts to right the ship a little bit. But obviously, I think many would project Michigan to be favored over the Spartans. So a trap game for sure. I would say the Minnesota, at Nebraska, at Minnesota, at Michigan State, those road games are not going to be easy by any means. And if Michigan is caught sleeping, caught walking, kind of like they might do for those first 3 games, it could result in a massive upset early in the year. So Michigan State, don't want to overlook that in the rivalry games. But again, most would project the win, 22-point swing. Bye week, Purdue. We already talked about the Boilermakers. Then you have a 3-game stretch that to me is the biggest and most important stretch of the year for Michigan. So when you really look at that, there's a very good chance that Michigan could be 9-0 heading into the final 3 games at Penn State, at Maryland, and of course the game hosting Ohio State. There's a very good chance Michigan could be 9-0 heading into that point. 9-0 would have them in the top 4, just like we have them right now, number 2 in the country. They would be a top 4 team sitting at 9-0. But the division would be far from clinched. The top 3 teams in the Big Ten East are, in no particular order, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Those are your top 3 teams in the East. Michigan has to play those top 2 competitors, Penn State and Ohio State, in a 3-week span. And in the middle, they have to face a Maryland team on the road that traditionally Michigan has success against. But last year, Michigan only won by 7, 34-27, although the score was a little bit closer than the game was. 34-27 over a Maryland team that starts to hit their stride under Mike Locksley. At Penn State, typically, historically, in recent years, the home team has usually won this battle between Penn State and Michigan. If history wants to repeat itself, Penn State would most likely win this game, especially with the most likely being the whiteout game in Happy Valley. Again, we're not predicting anything, but last year in Ann Arbor at the Big House, Michigan won 41-17. Typically, the road team loses this matchup. Penn State, we have as a top 10 team, loads of talent, not just at quarterback, but at running back and a pretty stingy defense. Once again, this will be must-see TV. That's a big game. A game that could have playoff implications, not just for Michigan, but for Penn State also, and a game that will have major implications when it comes to who could win the Big Ten East among those 3 teams that we just mentioned. So Penn State, huge. Maryland, major trap game. Why? Because it's sandwiched in between the 2 biggest games of the year. You're either high off a big road win at Penn State, you get caught sleeping at Maryland. You're low after a crushing season-blowing loss to Penn State, you get caught at Maryland. And in between all of that, you are looking ahead to Ohio State. Maryland could easily catch you sleeping on November 18th. Again, Michigan won by 7 last year. They took pretty good care of business in College Park the year before, but Terrapins are getting better under Mike Locksley. Michigan cannot afford to overlook them. Horrible place to be. Right there on the road, back-to-back weeks, right before you play Ohio State, your biggest rival of the game. That could be a top 5 showdown, a game that's going to have playoff implications, a game that's going to have Big Ten title implications. Everything could be on the line in the final week of the year. Maryland's going to look to screw that up. Michigan has to be mindful of the Terrapins. Fear the turtle. And then, of course, the season finale, Ohio State. 2 years ago in Ann Arbor, Michigan won big. Shocked the nation to an extent. Finally got the win for Jim Harbaugh over the Buckeyes, helped them get to the Big Ten Championship in the playoff. Last year in Columbus, people said, okay, Ohio State's going to get back on track. Didn't happen. Michigan ran all over Ohio State and won 45-23. Now they're back home. And if you look at the rosters right now, I think many people would say from an experience standpoint, Michigan owns the edge over Ohio State from an experience standpoint. They've got an experienced quarterback. They've got their running back returning. They've got their coach back, which Ohio State does too. The defense is loaded again. Michigan has belief and faith they can beat Ohio State because they've done it 2 years in a row, and it's going to be in Ann Arbor on Senior Day. A lot going Michigan's way in the season finale. Again, we're not here to predict anything, but that could be the season right there. Depending on what Michigan's record is, depending on what Ohio State's record is, this could be a play-in game to the Big Ten Championship, which ultimately could be the play-in game to the college football playoff. The stakes are going to be high. Always are in the game, but even more so with how we expect Michigan and Ohio State both to do. So again, you look at Michigan's schedule. It's a really, really good schedule. It's a very favorable schedule. I think Michigan will probably be favored in those first 9 games, and many would probably project them to be 9-0 heading into the final 3. It's how they fare in those final 3 games that will determine whether or not Michigan can get back to the college football playoff, can win the Big Ten once again, or whether they might fall just short. Remember, 1 loss might not be devastating. They beat Ohio State last year. Ohio State didn't make the Big Ten championship, and yet the Buckeyes still slipped in as the 4 seed. As long as Michigan doesn't lose 2 games, they might be okay. They might still find a way to get to their 3rd straight college football playoff. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Of course, check out everything down in that description below, because here at the Gridiron Expert, football never dies. The season never ends here at the Gridiron Expert. We want you to become a part of our GE Nation and what we're continuing to build on this channel. Become a part of something special. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification button. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.